Well, good morning. Today I'd like to do a kind of a prelogue of the upcoming high school years, which is a period of life that I'd like to share with you. Um, to begin with, in order to kind of understand me and to understand also the circumstances, we've discussed the war and all of that. So, you know, you have a background in that regard. But from a personal, physical, mental standpoint, let's hop back to the fifth grade. And probably actually a year or two before that, because there was an event that happened every fall, and that is, if you recall, we came out of the story environment, moved back to town, prepared for school. That would put us right at Labor Day, which would mean that all the apples native uh, would be ripening and ready to eat. Actually, they wouldn't be quite ripe at that point for most of the apples that were available to young hands as they walk down the street or go down an alley or whenever. Uh, it turns out that I had a strong, and I repeat, strong liking for green apples as they hung there invitingly in the fall uh, day. Well, that I succumbed to that every year there for several years, and in the fifth grade, we got through the fifth grade. Now, at that point in time, I should note that the result of my uh, imbibing was that I was prone to appendicitis, and it's incredibly likely that those green apples were a trigger, and I would find myself as a youngster on the floor in the bathroom, curled into a ball in horrible, horrible pain. And this happened for several years. And finally, at the end of the fifth grade, we decided, well, my mother decided, my dad decided, time for a doctor visit. We went to the doctor. He determined that my appendix was indeed touchy and should be removed. Well, that occurred uh, in August, if I recall correctly, right around the 1st of August. I'll have to check my dates in the back of the One Family Bible. But anyway, I had appendicitis surgery. My appendix was removed. And just as a note, at that point in time, uh, the hospital stay was, oh boy, it was almost 10 days to 2 weeks. And in fact, the first week you just laid in bed. They were of the opinion that everything had to heal, and when they were satisfied things were healing properly, Then you were allowed to get up and begin to rehabilitate. Well, now you can imagine uh, a week after surgery, you're so damn weak you can't move. I mean, you have to have assistance to walk down the hall. Well, this was a slow process, and I had a great desire to go out with the neighborhood kids and run and play, particularly run. I love to run. You know, it was just one of my joys. But I was told I had to wait a month. Well, that in my memory makes it the 1st of September, just before school's going to start. And on that day, I recall the doctor told me I could officially run. And that's what I did. I ran and ran. And ended up midday with an excruciating pain in my knee, and to the point where I was 2 houses down at the other Stevenses, and I just wanted to go home, and I left for home, but I found I couldn't walk, so I had to crawl. Well, that turned out to be a diagnosis of rheumatic fever. Rheumatic fever put me in bed. The treatment at that time was, at that time they recognized the relationship between rheumatic fever and heart disease, but the only treatment they had was rest, and hopefully you would not suffer any really serious damage from it. It was also, as we've talked, after the war, there were a lot of new ideas, new drugs available, and I was put on a regimen in bed. I went to bed, and that was it. And it turned out, be in bed for 6 months. I would miss the entire 6th grade, and I would be forced to, I learned to entertain myself. I learned to read. I learned to play cards. I collected coins. I started all different series of books, and I just learned how to live, and I could, by myself, and I could hear all the kids playing outside. At that time in my life, I could still hear relatively well, and I could hear them playing. I wasn't really allowed visitors, family, but I'm not sure whether they thought it was contagious or what. But so every day I downed my sulfa pills, which was, they hoped, the new cure for a multitude of things. It would, in fact, turn out to be the first of many drugs similar to the antibiotics we have today, that were indeed very effective against infection and disease and inflammation. So, but the pills were horrible. They were horrible. To this day, I don't think I have found a pill that's that big. I was able to take the pills, and I can now take any size pill. Now, that's fine. I had tutors that came in, and so I had instruction in basic mathematics, English, and some of the what we would call core courses for the 6th grade. And I was declared capable of going on into the 7th grade. I do want to mention that grade school was easy for me, and I don't know, I did not push myself. It was just not necessary. I just did what I needed to do and live my life. Well, the 7th grade was a new experience. I was back by that time outdoors. I was playing. I was part of the neighborhood again, and life was sort of picked up where we'd left off. Maybe at some time we could discuss some of those periods and some of the things that happened in my life, mentally. It was kind of a hard period. But 7th grade was in a new school. At that time, Sheridan had the 7th grade was separate. And the first 6 grades, of course, had been in Linden School. 7th was down in what we called Central. And the 7th grade, I remember, I rode my bike down and I rode my bike home. Of course, the neighbor kids were in different grades, either 1 grade or 2 grades ahead of me. So I really didn't have neighborhood friends to go with. So I just kind of lived through the 7th grade. Nothing special. The 8th, in fact, my recollection is really limited. Pause.